Greetings, everybody. It's Jim, and I'm definitely glad to do this scenario report for you today because it features one of the two games that got me into the weirder world of gaming. Okay, before it was all, I was collecting since I was 6 years old, but I mean, at the time I was around 15 or so, and I've only been used to seeing the family games from Parker Brothers, Pressman, Milton Bradley, etc., etc. I did not see anything like. I just got introduced to maybe Dungeons and Dragons a little bit ago, but I had seen two games at our local Hills department store on a discount shelf, and I said, "Ooh, games! These are different. I've never seen these companies before. What the heck is this?" And it was Steve Jackson's Illuminati in the little pocket box, and this game in the full box from SPI called Ragnarok: Twilight of the Gods. Okay, now what we see here is the magazine cover version from Ares, but the whole thing is this was totally blew me away. I tried my best to understand it and try to play it. It was still over my head to a big degree, but man, I was determined, bound and determined to learn the game. So today, I am going to be going over with you my scenario report for Ragnarok. Now, obviously, this is going to be a lot easier than it was when I was a kid. I mean, I've played it a numerous times since then, obviously, but I played it on my new wargaming table with the the plexiglass on top, and really, I'm still sold on that. I still got to do a video on it. But one of the things that I'd like to say before we get into the scenario itself is about some of the things about the rules and such that I found real weird, so I can just talk about the game as it transpires. The first thing is the rules aren't written very well at all. It's verboseness. It's just like every possible situation, they just go and just say everything, and they say it so verbosely that it's really hard to focus. It just says they're saying, it seems like they're almost saying and repeating the same things over and over and over again. And I've said this in my older videos. It's almost because it was the beginning of wargaming tool for a lot of people, and that's just how they talked about things. A lot of them were engineers and mathy people. Nerds are different now. I mean, the spectrum is much broader. It's mainstream, so that really means everybody. But they also, the good thing about it, I mean, you could say some things about gaming because of that, but one of the good things is they demand conciseness. They say get to the point, and a lot of these games were written by more mathy people, engineers and such, that have a very very specific way of going about explaining things, which makes it hard for the common man to really comprehend. There's a rigidity to it that really sets people back. But anyway, here's something that's interesting. And this is the damage table. Now, when you're playing this game, it's not a odds table, it's not a differential table, it's a to hit and damage table. Okay, so basically, what you're doing is you're taking the attack strength, the strength of the attacker, the defensive strength, or the defensive strength of the defender, and you're combining them, and that's your to hit roll. You roll 3 dice. There's a bell curve, and then if you roll that or less, you hit the target. Then you roll damage. So the interesting thing is the attack strength, the higher the number, the better. The defensive strength, the higher the number, the worse the defense is. Okay, so it's making your chances to get hit better. Now every +1 in this game is significant, and there's reasons for that, and I'll get to that in a bit, because you are rolling a lot of dice in this scenario. So the odds matter a little bit more than normal, I would say. In other smaller war games, I should say. In bigger war games, maybe not so much. But here we have the damage table. And what's interesting about this is they insist on using, of course, D6 dice. Okay. Nowadays, it would be like, what are you doing making with this table? Because the whole thing is, this really slows down the game a lot. So you got the dice and you roll them, and on what you'll see here is combat damage is what I'm talking about. Don't worry about blinding light. That on the right-hand side, that's just a special power that the gods have. On the left-hand side is what we're talking about. Well, let's look specifically at the unit column, okay? Because this is your basic standard troop column of taking damage. And it seems like it's all over the place. I mean, it's not like all sectioned off. It's like, okay, roll this to this, it's one and retreat. Roll this, it's eliminated. Roll this, it's all over the place. It's jarbled and barbled. And the reason is I think they wanted specific percentages, and with 2d6, you can't with a 1d10 it would be easy, right? It would just say you round it off to the nearest one, and if you wanted to get a little bit more gray areas, you could roll a 20-sided die if you had to. But again, this was back in the day, and six-sided dice were much more prevalent and cheaper than 10-sided dice. I wonder what the disparity was between dice. Now it's a horse apiece. The six-sided dice cost just as much as a 10-sided dice anymore, right? I think to a good degree anyway. But what would have been like then? That's what I would like to know. I have to admit, I would have to assume that it would be a lot more. So as you can see there, like to get eliminated, it's a six. Of all things. And the grievous injury for the heroes, look at the hero column there, because what they do is they have hit points, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But on the left-hand side here, that tells them how many hit points they lose. And 4G means they suffer a grievous injury, which is going to, like poison, knock them down every turn until they're dead, right? And that's on a 5. So a specific percentage, I didn't figure out what the percentage is, but you add all those percentages of the things that are the same, and it's like, man, if they could have just worked it out on a percentile dice system or something like that, it not only would have been a lot faster. I mean, this really slows it down. All right, let's take a look at the units real quick. I mean, this is just some of them. These are the fire giants, and there's this frost giant on the top there that you can see. And on the right side, we have warriors. And I don't have any Valkyries that I'm showing there right now, but there are Valkyries on the Asir side. That's the Jotun. I believe it's Jotun because it has one of those little things on top of the O there on the left-hand side. And we got the Aesir player on the right-hand side. Basically, it's Loki against Thor as far as I'm concerned. That's the easiest way. Let's just let my inner Marvel go into that, okay? So we got Loki on the left, Thor on the right. Simple enough. But basically, let's take a look at the numbers here, because I like the way they do the format, and I think it should be adapted in a lot of other war games, quite honestly. The attack strengths on the far left, the defense strengths on the far right, and the movement is in the middle in a smaller font, so it differentiates from the attacker strength and the defense strength. Okay, now I've seen a lot of games where it's attack strength, defense strength, movement. I like this. If you're going to only use these three, the trifecta of wargaming, this is a format that I would highly suggest because it makes everything, just that little thing with the font in the middle for movement makes everything clear. And as you can see, like a fire giant going up against a warrior, fire giants, or let's say frost giant. Frost giant's got a 7 attack, that frost giant on the top there, against a warrior with a defense strength of 3, that makes a 10. You roll 3-sided dice. That's a 50% chance to hit by default. There's not a lot of modifiers in this, like +1s. There are for the gods, maybe, because some gods hate other gods more and they get a +1 to attack. But there's not a lot of modifiers when it comes to the terrain because it's pretty much open field. Maybe going across, attacking across the river gets you a -2, or fighting in the forest, but that's about it. But that is it. It's about a 10, and that which is a 50% chance to hit. It ranges from around there, just a +1 here and there. +1 against on a bell curve again is rather significant, giving you about 13 to 15% increase just by getting a +1. But it adds up because you are rolling a lot of dice once the battle starts. I mean, it's not just going to be a luck fest because it's all going to even out sooner or later. But at the same time, the one person that gets the +1s more are going to see the advantage. Where they show up is a different story. They could all show up on one area for the advantage, or it could just be pocked all over the place. There's a lot of gaming that I've been noticing back in the day about how they randomize battles, and we'll see that at the beginning of this scenario, as a matter of fact. Okay, so here we have the gods chart now, which basically is an endurance track. That's what they call it for all intents and purposes. It's hit points, okay? And this has Thor starting up at the top with 20 hit points, and at the lowest 15 on the other side. And this is where you got Loki, Odin, I said Thor, you got Heimdall, the Midgard Serpent, and the Garm, the Hellhound, and such. Now, the thing is about the chart here, as you can see, your average hit for a god is 2 points. So you could see already there's going to be a significant amount of fighting going on with the gods, and they're going to be sticking around for quite a while the average rank and file, a lot of times they'll either retreat or they'll take a step damage, and you have to flip the counter to a weakened state, and they only get eliminated outright on a 6 on 2d6 as we've seen before. So basically, though, these gods are going to be around for the while, and even then they can heal if they get unengaged from combat. Unengagement is a big thing in this game, and I'll get to it in a bit. But basically, as long as they're unengaged, they actually regain a point. And in a game like this, where it's a long battle, it's really important to assume that these gods are going to be at the end of the battle when all the other forces are gone, and that comes into play in this scenario report. All right, so here we have a closer look at the rainbow bridge here. Now, the thing is, when I said that you roll your six-sided die and add 2 to find out what turn the reinforcements for the seer player comes over, I got a 7. At first, I was like, wow, that's a lot of turns. How much of a head start is the Jotun going to get? But the thing is, it takes 3 turns for them to even get to Heimdall in the first place, because they don't use their movement allowance. They actually just go 1 rainbow section at a time, okay? So it's 3 turns before you even get there, and then you have to take care of Heimdall before you can get onto the board. And as you can see by the endurance track that we looked at, that's still going to take a number of turns. So 7's not so bad. Now the thing is, we've got 3 against 1 here. We got Hiram, Loki, and Fenrir going up against Heimdall. Now you can use units, but it's not suggested you do, because anytime a unit attacks Heimdall and Heimdall's not dead at the end of the turn, that unit is eliminated. So you only want to do it when Heimdall's on his last licks, and you want to try to hasten the process, and you think the risk is worth it. Okay, but if you're patient enough, Heimdall should fall here. Now the thing is, it's only 1 unit a turn too. You can't just put 4 units up against Heimdall. There is no stacking for any ground units. The only things that can stack are Valkyries and heroes. Heroes, you can put an unlimited amount into a space, but here it's only 1. So it's, unless you're killing Heimdall he's on his last licks, don't put a unit in there. Now we can look at the Rainbow Bridge collapse table. As we can see, 4 fewer units does not risk collapse. Units, not gods, units only. But as soon as you get to 5, there's a chance of it, and it's a smaller chance, but you don't want to risk it. It's like, why even do that if you just need to put 5 on there? It's almost like, if you're going to risk it, risk it. Put 7 on there, put 8 on there, and just get lucky. But the thing is, you got to wonder, hey, what's the point of having that many more units? Maybe if you roll bad on the Aesir table, the reinforcement table, it's actually a reverse, where I'm thinking the Jotun player is trying to get there in a hurry to get past the river. I'm thinking maybe it's actually the Aesir player. If you roll like a 1 on the reinforcement times, and it's only 3 turns, like they start getting in reinforcements the second you actually engage Heimdall, and they're coming over. They might make it all the way over to you if you don't get lucky enough and defeat Heimdall and actually block you completely off with more gods, because as long as Heimdall's the only one there, if other units come to help out, including the gods, they can make it the Rainbow Bridge like impossible to cross. So I'm thinking that's what the risk is. So maybe that's only going to come into fruition if the Aesir player actually starts getting onto the field quicker. Okay, and to just give you guys a preview of what's coming next, like and subscribe while you're waiting, by the way. We are going to be doing Car Wars, a race of Car Wars next, 60 turns long. It's a big one because this is going to be a 3-lap race, and if you've played Car Wars before, you're going to probably be thinking, will anybody really cross the finish line? The answer is yes. It was a fun 60 turns, and you really get going after a while, but we're going to be checking that out next video. But now, back on to Ragnarok. All right, so here we have the game all set up and ready to go, and it's a beautiful game to set up because the only things you got to do is put Heimdall on the Rainbow Bridge in the lower left-hand corner, blocking the Rainbow Bridge, and then put up all the hit point counters on the gods chart for all the gods, and that's it. You're ready to set up and you can go. The thing is, none of the units start on the map at all. The Jotun player is going to go over the Rainbow Bridge on the bottom left-hand corner there you see, and they're going to try to defeat Heimdall for a few turns, and they're going to be busy. And the Aesir player with Thor and everybody, they're too busy being drunk or whatever, and they are going to be coming over on turn D6 plus 2. So you're going to roll a 6-sided die, add 2, and that's a turn they start to come over. They don't even come over right away, actually, as a matter of fact. On the first turn that they can come over, they got to roll for a warrior. They roll D6 minus 1, and that's how many warriors come over. They roll D6 minus 2, and that's how many Valkyries come over. Then they roll a 6-sided die for every god, and if they roll a 1, that god comes over. So it's a very slow process that gradually gets all the forces off on the board. But all this time, the Jotun player is trying to get to Heimdall to make headway to get there faster. Now, I first thought that the idea was to get across that river so there wouldn't be a negative factor. I didn't remember at the time about getting across there. That's what the inner wargamer in me says. Get across the river. If you can defeat Heimdall quickly, which is the temptation to break the Rainbow Bridge and get across, then the Aesir player is going to have a really rougher time defeating you. Found out that wasn't the case, and I found that kind of weird, but I will get into that later. Okay, so here we have the scenario proper going on, and basically it takes 7 turns for Heimdall to fall. All right, so basically 7 turns, and of course, lo and behold, that's when the Aesir player gets their reinforcements on the board, and I start rolling off pretty good. I get 3 warriors, a Valkyrie, and a hero right off the top of the bat. Now, I'm going to be, again, my idea for the Aesir player is to get to that river and try to defend it. I told you already that I found out this is completely wrong. It actually benefits the Jotun player to fight across the river, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But here we go. I play conservatively with the Jotun player, just 4 units across the bridge every turn. Or on the turn on the bridge every turn. I don't want it to collapse. There's no reason to. The Aesir player's already got its reinforcements. Now, by turn 10, there's hardly any Valkyries coming out. I'm not rolling any of them. All warriors and heroes. And it's just interesting. And of course, Odin is right there taking the charge right in the front. And so we get to turn 12, and there's a couple of things I'll get into right here is about engagement, okay? And as you can see, Odin is actually crossing the river right off the bat. I'll get into why in a second. The thing is about engagement. When 2 ground forces, and the ground forces, I mean the Aesir warriors, not the Valkyries, but the warriors, and the fire giants and the frost giants, when those ground units are next to each other, they are locked. They are engaged. They cannot move. They cannot even shift between turns 1 hex. They are locked in and they cannot move. If they want to move, they compare their movement allowances and roll on the chart. Maybe they can move away at that point. And that actually comes into play because you kind of do want to get away from some units to actually find a way to help other units, not necessarily directly with combat, but when it comes to cutting off retreat squares. Because in this game, unlike other games that I've seen where they say, well, if you can't retreat, you lose a step of damage or something like that. Here, it's usually that retreat means, you have to be surrounded literally by forces. Here, you cannot retreat if you would be engaged with another unit. So even if the unit's not directly close by or adjacent, you may not be able to move. You can't move there because they're there. So that actually makes it a little bit easier to get surrounded, which I like. And surrounding a unit in that way also gives them a negative to attack and defend as well. So that's interesting. Now, when it comes to stacking, with ground units, like I said, that is basically, one a hex. That's it. Valkyries can go on with a friend, and that's it. Heroes, it's unlimited. You can have as many heroes you want in any 1 hex. They're just one guy, albeit a powerful guy, but they can walk anywhere, even over other units. The only units that would stop a hero is another hero. That makes them engaged, and then they have to roll on the unengagement table like anybody else, okay? So here we got turn 13. Now, here's why it looks like the Aesir player is totally blowing their idea about defending the river is because I find out it's ineffective. All a river does is give you a -2 to attack, and that's it. But that's for both sides. And the thing is, the Jotun player with the Frost Giants and Fire Giants are actually stronger than than the warrior units on the Aesir side. So basically, it actually benefits the Jotun player to try to fight across a river. So I found that kind of weird. So the whole idea of getting across the river or getting to the river first is actually reversed. It's not the Aesir player wanting to fight across the river. It's the Jotun player wanting to fight across the river. So the Aesir player has to make it across quicker. So that's really weird. I find that really unusual. So anyway, here's turn 13. And then we got turn 14 here, and we got a few units getting engaged. And as we can see, all the units are almost all on for the Jotun player. The Rainbow Bridge is about empty. And on the bottom right-hand side here, with the exception of those 6 units that you see on the bottom here, those are Berserker counters. Odin can turn warriors into Berserkers for a turn, and so can one other hero. Turn a few. Those ones don't come on at all unless commanded. But there's still a good amount of forces that aren't on the board yet. The heroes are on the board, and they are going to be taking a shellacking, by the way, quite quickly. So here we got some more units, and this turn there was a lot more reinforcements that came on this one. But now we're getting the turn 16, and finally almost all the units are on the board. But as you could see on the top, where I was taking all the defeated units, 2 gods are dead, and only 2, maybe 1 unit ground unit from the Aesirs is dead, and 2 Jotun are dead. But that's going to change real quick. Jotun units start dropping like flies as the Valkyries that finally make it to the dance. They're all on the top there. I just decided, hey, there's room. They're going to be able to move. They're going to try to surround these guys. As I said, surrounding is not too hard. All you got to do is just get behind somebody and don't have to really literally surround them. So that's what they're going to try to do. So slow and steady wins the race, which is kind of funny when you talk about Valkyries. And as you can see, the Jotun units just slowly just start getting wailed. More and more. But there's also something else that happens, as you can see on the right-hand side with the God Endurance chart. A lot of Aesir heroes are getting grievous injuries. They're all rolling that mystical number 5, and they're getting that poison injury that just knocks them down by 2 every turn, and they are going to just be going. Now, I start pushing a little bit. The Aesir player is definitely making headway. They're going to definitely surround the Jotun player. It doesn't look good for them as these turns go on, but stay tuned because it's not over, and I'll get to why in a little bit. But look at the Jotun units now. They are just eating it up. I mean, they're just getting eaten up, I should say. And look at that. Look at all the inverted counters now. It is almost over. I seen the writing on the wall, and I said, well, this is terrible. Even though there is only, look at the gods, though. There's 3 gods left on the Jotun player side, but only 2 gods on the Aesir player side, and they all have grievous injuries. They're all gone. And once they're all gone, all the units now, when they get a retreat result, it's automatically going to be take a step retreat, a step damage, and a retreat result automatically. So every time the Jotun player will hit somebody, they're going to be taking a step of damage. That might turn the tide. Okay, that's what I'm thinking, even with the small number of units they got left. So let's keep on going. But there's something magical that happens here in a little bit here that changes everything. So here we go again. And now there's only 1 god in the game, and he's on the left-hand side. This is when it happens. This is when the lights come on and something happens, because I remember something about engagement. Now, the god that's left is on the left side of the boards there somewhere. I can't see him. Yeah, he's on the road right there. Matter of fact, he's starting to make it back because I already seen what was going to happen. But the gods, as I remember you said, they're not engaged unless another hero is there. And there's only 1 hero, and he's on the left-hand side. That means all the gods on the right hand, on the Jotun side, are free to walk right into the castle, right into Asgard. I didn't even think about it. So that is a big deal when you're playing. So let's see what happens. Can the 1 hero from the Aesir player that got 2, way out there, can he recover in time? Can he make it with only so many left? So many hit points left. He's dying. He's not going to make it. Is what we find out. And you could see the Jotun player, the hero, is actually they're all rushing to that gate. That's because the counter's underneath the Aesir player, and so the Jotun player, I forget which hero it was, made it a gate. He's got to crack it down. He's got fire breathing, so he's trying to crack it down. Gets a free attack to do it. And he's still trying, and it's not happening. So I'm throwing all my forces on there, trying to stop this one guy. And guess who's still fettered? Guess who's still fettered? Hiram. He's still there, I think, and he's just recovering now at this point. But all these guys, here's the last turn coming up, and there it is. Boom. He made it. He made it through. One guy made it through because I had remembered the no engagement rule. That is going to be a big deal. So your heroes are going to be the big thing when playing Ragnarok, as they should be, really. But you can't just say, okay, here's the big battle. You got to kill the heroes. You got to kill all the Jotun heroes if you're the Aesir player. The Aesir player, well, it doesn't really matter too much, it's about their heroes as much. But you got to kill all the Jotun players. Otherwise, otherwise, they're just going to walk right all over and just make it. And they're too powerful. That's another thing. The ground forces they're helpful to try to attack those gods, but they don't do too much. They don't hit that often, they can do damage and stuff. And then there were a few times where they got grievous injuries on a hero, so they're worth doing. But it's just really different. One thing that I also learned is in this, if you want to, all the heroes, if they start getting hit, they can just retreat, heal up a little bit. You can't heal from a grievous injury. You might as well just keep fighting until you die, because you can heal one, but you're losing two. So what's the point? So we definitely, want to heal your guys as Jotun player as much as possible. Get back into the fight. I see this game, as you can imagine, coming down to the heroes all the time. Or the heroes being the only ones left on the board. Go figure in the Battle of Ragnarok how epic that might seem and obvious that would seem. But anyway, I did have a lot of fun. As much as I'd like to switch things like the damage table a little bit to make it a little bit easier to just roll the dice, I really like the way they handled retreats. And being surrounded. Because a lot of games, and I don't know if the beer and pretzel games that I've played or other war games that might be of a different scale perhaps, but the idea was surrounding mean you literally had to surround them, so you had to have so many units come around. It just didn't feel like you really could surround them that often, or it was so often because obvious, because if you got 6 units around surrounding something, it's going to get defeated anyway. You got that many units attacking it. So I do like the idea of just 1 or 2 units being there to just, making it tough for somebody to retreat would be enough, and not even necessarily adjacent. So I like that a lot. Now, the motivation to play Ragnarok, other than SPI nostalgia, is basically just to see the story that transpires. I can totally see the gods of Olympus coming by and just looking over and saying, I wonder what the gods of Asgard are up to. Let's see what's going to happen here, right? You can play to win. If you played this on an ongoing basis, you would get used to certain tactics. Obviously, things like Odin knows who to throw his fetters at, and of course the Jotun player knowing which heroes to keep away from Odin, right? And other things like little modifiers of who, what heroes can go up against other heroes to get a bonus and such. It definitely comes down to the heroes. There's no doubt about it in my mind. So yeah, you could play to win, but I think the real fun is playing just to see the story that transpires. And remember, everybody, I am doing Car Wars Classic with that 3-lap race. So that's my video on Ragnarok, and I'll see you at the racetrack.